Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we have reached the midway point of the college football season. From here on out is gut check time in the FCS. We have yet another action-packed show for you guys this week. Here's what we have on tap for this episode. Like I mentioned before, it's the midway point of the FCS season, and we'll see where we stand from a power ranking standpoint as we release our mid-season top 25. We'll also take a look at our Week 7 NFL Draft prospects that you want to keep an eye on this upcoming weekend. And as always, like no other outlet, we'll bring you a coast-to-coast preview of Week 7 on the FCS schedule. But first, let's get into our 4-minute offense and take a look at some of the top storylines heading into Week 7. Chase Edmonds and Tariq Cohen continue to put the FCS on the map with their performances. Edmonds ran for 359 yards on 17 carries and 4 touchdowns versus Lafayette. Cohen topped 200 yards again in a primetime matchup over Norfolk State on ESPN. Now, both guys' performances ended up getting spotlighted on ESPN that particular evening, and I think it's pretty safe to say that we found the leading candidates for the Peyton Award, and it's good that both guys are tailbacks. Even though there's always something big going on or something to watch in the FCS, this week feels a little bit different as there are some big-time matchups on the schedule. You have South Dakota State versus North Dakota State, Villanova versus Richmond, Chattanooga versus the Citadel, amongst others. And if last week was Show Me Something Saturday, then this weekend is Showdown Saturday in the FCS. Both the Grambling State Tigers and Charleston Southern Bucks haven't played a game since October 1st. Grambling has had back-to-back bye weeks, and Charleston Southern's game versus Albany State on October 6th was canceled due to Hurricane Matthew. Both teams are also off this week and return to action on October 22nd, which will be a welcome sight because both teams are playing some really good football this season. The Mountain Hawks are on a 4-game winning streak and are averaging 50 points a game in the process. I know we've talked about Sam Houston State's offense being one of the best in the nation regardless of division, but you have to give Lehigh a ton of credit. You're talking about a team that boasts a talented offensive line, a quartet of receivers, a game breaker at running back, and 2 outstanding quarterbacks. They don't look like they'll be slowing down anytime soon, and they have a big-time game this weekend down in D.C. versus Georgetown. Looking at our Offensive Player of the Week, it's tough to ignore what Fordham's Chase Edmonds did last week to the Lafayette Leopards. The 5'9", 205-pound junior ran for 359 yards on 17 carries, averaging an eye-popping 21.4 yards a carry. That's an absurd number. All of it really is tough to do that in practice when they let you run the football. Edmonds, in my opinion, is the lead dog in the race for the Peyton Award.
Defensive Player of the Week award goes to Rohan Hilton, the linebacker from Princeton. I thought he did a great job last week versus Georgetown. 3 tackles, a sack, a pass breakup, a couple of hurries. This was a guy that was all over the field and was a big reason why the Tigers knocked off the Hoyas.
Our Special Teams Player of the Week, we have a tie between Sam Houston State's freshman returner Jalen Harris, who returned 5 kicks for 168 yards versus Incarnate Word. Harris averaged an impressive 33.5 yards per kickoff return, and Columbia's kicker Orrin Milstein, who connected on 5 field goals as Columbia went into Staten Island and pulled off the upset over Wagner 15-13.
Well, the FCS creates so many opportunities for young men. And it's, I think, and you look in our league, it's really the best. It's the best combination of winning football, but also outstanding student athletes. That's really the true model here. And a lot of the FCS programs feel the same way. And, you know, we're blessed to be where we're at here at Lehigh, and everybody else in this league feels the same way. But the FCS, you'll see a lot of people that aren't coming necessarily to the NFL, but what they are is they're becoming leaders of industry, whatever they do when they graduate. And that's really the most important piece of going to college and playing college football, is to getting that degree. And our guys really excel in that response.
What's up, FCS fans? I'm Ray Ryan with your Big South report for Week 7. I know, I can't believe that we're more than halfway through the regular season either, so let's get you caught up on where things stand so far. In Week 6, Liberty and Charleston Southern did not take the field. The Flames had a scheduled week off, but the Buccaneers' home game against Albany State was postponed due to Hurricane Matthew. CSU Athletic Director Hank Small said that the school would love to find a way to play the game at a later date, but they haven't had a chance to explore those possibilities yet. He added that the end of the season would be the most logical time to play. For the Big South teams that did take the field this past weekend, both Monmouth and Kennesaw State were impressive in picking up non-conference victories. The Hawks went on the road and put up 562 yards of total offense, including 100-yard rushing games from Ed Royds and Michael Jolly, as they won easy over Howard University 59-27. For Kennesaw, QB Chandler Burks had another big day on the ground with 118 yards and 3 scores as the Owls protected the nest, dominating Missouri S&T by a final of 49-16. And in our final game of Week 6, we had our second conference matchup of the season, in which Gardner-Webb also defended their home turf, pulling away from Presbyterian by a score of 24-3. Running Bulldogs QB Tyrell Maxwell amassed 377 all-purpose yards and 2 TDs, while running back Khalil Lewis also eclipsed a 100-yard rushing mark on the day. Now that we've given you the most recent scores, let's update you on those Big South standings. Charleston Southern and Gardner-Webb are both 1-0 in the conference, with the Bucks standing at 3-2 overall and the Running Bulldogs at 3-3. Kennesaw State and Liberty have not yet played a Big South game, but the Owls are 4-1 and the Flames are 2-3. And finally, Monmouth and Presbyterian are both 0-1 in league action, with the Hawks holding a 4-2 overall record and the Blue Hose sitting at 1-4. All right, let's move on to Week 7 because we have 2 Big South games and another matchup that features the number 16 team in the Stats FCS poll. First, let me mention, though, that Charleston Southern is off this week, but they stand at number 8 in the FCS coaches poll. The Bucks return to the field on the 22nd, where they host Presbyterian. As for the games this week, we get started early because one of those conference games is Thursday night, when Monmouth travels to Presbyterian for a 7 p.m. kickoff in the first ever Thursday night game at Bailey Memorial Stadium. As we mentioned, both teams are 0-1 in league play, so it's obviously a huge matchup. However, the squads seem to be moving in opposite directions, as the Hawks have scored 100 points over their 2 straight wins, while the Blue Hose have only been able to put up 10 in their back-to-back losses. Both programs can run the ball effectively, but haven't been that great at stopping the run. Monmouth has 4 ball carriers over 145 yards on the season, led by Ed Royds and his 6 TDs, while Presbyterian's rushing attack is anchored by Darrell Bridges, who is averaging 84 yards a game and is only 118 yards away from 2,000 on his career. The Hawks have been much more effective, though, in their passing offense and in stopping the pass. Monmouth QBs Cody Williams and Kenji Bahar are completing 64% of their attempts for 212 yards per game, while the Hawks secondary, led by safety Mike Basile, is holding opponents to a league-low 135 yards through the air. I think the Hawks win the passing game battle and get their first conference win of the season. And our second Big South game of the week will take place on Saturday night when Liberty visits Kennesaw State for a 7 p.m. contest that can be seen on ESPN3. This is another very important game for both schools since they have each received top 25 votes and it's their first conference game of the season. It's also a tough one for me to judge because Liberty is 2-3, but their losses were to stiff competition in FBS schools Virginia Tech and SMU, and also FCS powerhouse Jacksonville State. Freshman QB Stephen Calvert looked great in their victory over Robert Morris as well, throwing for 340 yards and 4 scores, and the Flames have had 2 weeks to prepare for Kennesaw since that game. On the other hand, you can't deny the offensive success that the Owls have had over their 4-game winning streak, as they're 6th nationally with 297 rushing yards per contest, and their 40 points per game is good for 10th best in the country. QB Chandler Burks leads the Big South in total touchdowns with 13, but he may be without his top target, Justin Sumter, who missed last week's game with an ankle sprain. Kennesaw's competition has also not been on the same level as what Liberty has faced, so I think this one could be a nail-biter and will probably come down to which team makes that game-changing play on defense. Both schools have dominant pass rushers on the line and ball hawks in the secondary too. Juwan Wells has 4.5 sacks for Liberty, while Tyrone Holloway has 3 INTs. However, Kennesaw has the leading sack artist in the Big South with Desmond Johnson at 5, and also the DB with the most picks in the nation in Dante Blackman with 5 as well. Look for one of those defensive playmakers to be the difference. And in our last game of the week, we have a former Big South rival, Coastal Carolina, visiting Gardner-Webb for a 1:30 start on Saturday afternoon. The Chanticleers are 3-2, but they're ranked 16th in the stats poll because both of their losses were by 1 point against top 10 teams in Jacksonville State and Charleston Southern. Coastal was idle last week, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare for the Running Bulldogs, but Gardner-Webb has destroyed their last 2 opponents by a combined score of 69-3. And this is another game that features 2 great running attacks, with the Running Bulldogs averaging 270 yards on the ground, led by signal caller Tyrell Maxwell and halfback Khalil Lewis. The Chanticleers are anchored by running back D'Angelo Henderson, who has 9 rushing TDs and 2 receiving of his own. I think this is one that's also going to come down to the turnover battle, though, and to me, Coastal appears to have the edge in that area. Linebacker Alex Scarce and DB Richie Sampson both have multiple interceptions and have returned them for scores. Not to mention that Scarce also has 3 sacks and 2 forced fumbles on the season. So I like the Chanticleers to come up with a big play on defense win a close game against the Running Bulldogs. Well, that does it for your Week 7 Big South report. I'm Ray Ryan. As always, I hope you enjoy the games.
We just acknowledged kicker Oren Milstein as a Special Teams Player of the Week for his huge role in the upset of Wagner, which made our upset alert list last week. Let's see who should be on upset alert this week in Week 7.
This game has the potential for an upset, which is why it ended up on our list. Coastal Carolina is a really good team with a ton of great athletes. The issues when you're playing a team like Gardner-Webb is that their offense, which is either a true triple option or has option-like principles, is that it neutralizes the athleticism and forces teams to play disciplined for 4 quarters. That alone will yield very close games. The key for a team like Gardner-Webb in this matchup would be to maximize the offensive opportunities they'll get with touchdowns. I like the Bulldogs defense, especially at the second level. I just can't trust their offense enough to pull off the upset. I think the Chanticleers win this one. This is another big game that's on upset alert because of the desperation factor. Bethune-Cookman is desperate for a victory. They've been snake bitten by Mother Nature and some in-game mishaps that have snatched victory away from the Wildcats. They are not a bad football team, as their record may indicate. This week they travel to the red-hot North Carolina A&T Aggies, who are starting to pull away in the MEAC. Here's the deal. The Aggies have arguably the best team in the conference and the best running back and also defensive line, but they do have a propensity to sleepwalk early in games, and that'll be the perfect time for Bethune-Cookman to grab an early lead and build some confidence. I can see that happening, but I can also see the Aggies waking up and starting to pull away in the end. It should be a great game as Montana State travels to Weber State, and normally when you're talking about upset watch, you're talking about the Wildcats over the Bobcats, but Weber State is coming in red hot on a 3-game winning streak, and the Bobcats are the ones that's reeling after some close losses in 3 out of their last 4 games. Now, it's all about confidence, and with Weber State, you see a young team that's starting to believe that they can win these games, while conversely, with Montana State, you're seeing a young team that's trying to learn how to win. The biggest question in this game is if the Wildcats defense getting off the field, if they can do that consistently. I think they can. Quietly, both teams play the same game. I just think Weber State has played it a little bit more consistently this year. I like the Wildcats.
For me, I think the biggest thing that football taught me was how to overcome adversity.
At some point in your life, you're going to have some tough times.
You have to have that next play mentality.
That cohesiveness and that working together, that's really something special that you can't get in a lot of other areas.
When you practice that and you live that in other phases of your life, it becomes second nature because all you know how to do is fight.
It's not an easy game. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
You start to appreciate the smaller contributions that people make. You don't just look at the big one because you knew it took 6 or 7 other guys who are unsung.
And you can't take shortcuts and be successful.
Doing what they do to make it possible for the guy getting the press clippings or whatever it might be.
In this game, whether it's as a coach or a player.
So I would certainly say that you definitely got a very quick lesson in how to overcome adversity playing football.
In the Mid-Atlantic region this week, the Lehigh Mountain Hawks travel to Cooper Field for a matchup against Patriot League foe Georgetown. And this game will be a strength versus strength matchup as the passing game of Lehigh will face a very tough and active secondary in Georgetown. Now, the Hoyas linebacker Javion Butler is listed as a linebacker, but he has the athleticism to match up in space versus receivers, backs, and also tight ends. He should have a big-time role in this upcoming game, and I'll be the color commentator on this one, so I won't pick a winner, but be sure to tune in Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Patriot League Network on Campus Insiders and check it out.
This is a tremendous matchup in the CAA between Richmond and Villanova. This has almost a playoff game type feel to it. Villanova has been on a tear since their opening game loss to Pitt, and what has been impressive about this team is that they have the ability to control both sides of the line of scrimmage. Their offensive and defensive lines allow them the ability to do multiple things on either side of the ball. Richmond's offense hasn't missed a beat throughout the season. They've been one of the more consistent and multiple offenses in the FCS. They've won some close games because of their defense is opportunistic and their offense has the ability to strike quick. Like I always say, styles make fights, so when you break this game down, you ask yourself if Richmond can win consistently at the point of attack. I think they can, and the question then turns to Villanova. Can they do enough in the passing game to keep the Spiders honest? That's the part where I think they struggle. This will look a lot like the Lehigh game, in my opinion. I think this one will end up in a Richmond victory as opposed to a loss. I like the Spiders. The James Madison Dukes offense looks virtually unstoppable. Running back Khalid Abdullah is steamrolling toward All-American honors with the way he's running the football. Defensively, we're seeing a complete different defense than what we saw a year ago. The Dukes are getting pressure, they're getting a ton of stops, and they're generating turnovers. Where they still may be a bit vulnerable is versus the run. That's where New Hampshire comes into this conversation, as the Wildcats boast a tremendous tailback in themselves in Dalton Crossan. I would expect a heavy dose of the ground game in this one. Defensively, the Wildcats have gotten better each and every game, and I think they do have enough defense to slow down that JMU offense, but I don't think their offense, especially in the passing game, can put up enough to take advantage of those additional opportunities. I like the Dukes.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at gocsb.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
As we move down south to take a look at some more games this weekend, we look at the SoCon because there's a big-time battle in that conference as the undefeated Chattanooga Mocs take on the undefeated Citadel Bulldogs.
What a great matchup this weekend between these two schools, and the biggest key for both squads in this one will be discipline. For the Mocs, how disciplined can they be against one of the most potent option attacks in college football? And for the Citadel, how disciplined can they be in their rush responsibilities against quarterback Alejandro Benefield? The offensive key for the Mocs will be to build an early lead and force the Bulldogs to consistently play catch-up. Also, that will require the offense to get off to a great start and be able to sustain drives very early in this ball game. The Citadel will have to connect on one of these rare passing plays early on to keep that Mocs defense honest, and I think we'll see a tight game here, one with the Mocs prevailing late in a thriller. Huge game in the SWAC this week as Southern travels to Jackson State. The Jaguars are coming off consecutive bye weeks, well rested and ready to take on a Tigers team that's on a 2-game winning streak. The key for the Jaguars will be to get off to an early start, especially defensively, against a JSU team that seems to have found some confidence offensively. Now, Jackson State is sitting atop the SWAC East Division standings and will be looking to create some distance between themselves and second place Alcorn State. Now, what they have to do in this matchup is to make Southern one-dimensional. That starts by making sure talented tailback Leonard Tillery doesn't get going early. Southern's biggest threat to their offense is outside linebacker defensive end Javancy Jones. Jones, a football game plan preseason All-American, has NFL potential coming off the edge, and despite the winning streak, I think it'll end versus Southern. The Jags have done an outstanding job this season on both ends of the field. They'll come into Jackson, Mississippi ready to go, and they'll leave with the victory.
Are you ready? The Connecticut School of Broadcasting can help you reach the next level in the amazing world of broadcast and entertainment media.
I've mentored several interns here at the Covino and Rich Show at SiriusXM, and the ones from CSB always stand out to me. They have a knowledge of the equipment, knowledge of editing, what it's like to be in a studio, and that always eliminates a huge learning curve.
Their professional studios give students a hands-on, learn-by-doing approach using equipment used in actual radio stations and TV studios. Visit our website at gocsb.com or call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Start today.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Running back Tariq Cohen has firmly made himself into a premier NFL draft prospect, and here are 9 other players and their matchups that you should keep an eye on this week as you're watching some FCS action in our 5th Down Draft Outlook.
Starting with Zach Conkey, the quarterback out of Stephen F. Austin. His father is the head coach of that football team at 6'5", 237. While he split time this year because of inconsistent play, he has a requisite size that scouts look for, and he has put up a lot of production throughout the course of his time down there in Nacogdoches. So I do think he has the skill and some talent to play at the next level. It'll be interesting to watch him compete fully against Southeastern Louisiana. I'm a big fan of Tyler Renew's game out of the Citadel. He's the fullback in that triple option attack, 5'11", 220, but his game reminds me a lot of Brian Leonard and what we saw from him while he was at Rutgers. He's a guy that is listed as a fullback, but I think he can serve dual purpose as a fullback and also as a one-back situation as he progresses to the next level. I think he does have very good pro-level game. He can catch the football out of the backfield very well. He has really good vision. He runs well in between the tackles. So as a pure running back standpoint, he definitely has value, and I'm looking forward to seeing him compete against a very strong defensive line in Chattanooga. Anytime you have a tight end, your offense will be very tough to defend, especially in college football. You look at Steven Robluski out of Southern Utah, 6'7", 265, does a great job playing in line, very good in the running game, and also can be flexed out if need be as a wide receiver. He has a big-time test this week versus North Dakota because they are very athletic at the second level. They can match up against any tight end, and also their strong safety does a great job in getting good coverage on opposing tight ends. So how well can he get open? Can he get open consistently is what I'll be watching for in this ball game. The Sycamores have themselves a very good wide receiver in Robert Tonyan Jr. I want you to keep an eye on him this week versus South Dakota. He's a big-time playmaker at 6'5", 220. He can play outside. He can play inside, both as a slot or as a pseudo-F receiver. I like his versatility. I like how he's able to high-point the football. And don't sleep on his ability to make things happen after the catch. Somebody that's 6'5", 220 is not supposed to be moving that fast, and he's that physical as well. So this is a very good receiver prospect. A lot of talk about Cooper Kupp, but keep an eye on him moving forward. He's a very good player. Javarius Lehman out of South Carolina State at 6'6", 310 has tremendous footwork. You like his athleticism for a guy that tall, but you also like his ability to bend his knees and get underneath the defender and does a great job of moving guys off the spot consistently. Now, he started his career at Clemson, and he has blossomed as a next-level type talent with the Bulldogs. Kapachi Tall out of Yale is an intriguing prospect at 6'2", 295. I love his burst off the football. I love how he's able to collapse the pocket with brute strength. But what I'll be watching for in this game versus Fordham is how well he can play with his hands and his eyes, because, again, they're facing Chase Edmonds in the backfield, and if he can be patient at the line of scrimmage, use his hands to get a good piece of distance versus against the offensive lineman, and his eyes to follow the football, I think that bodes well for his chances moving forward, because, again, a lot of times you just can't beat guys with speed. You can't beat guys with power. You have to play smart. You have to play patient. And I want to see if he can do that in this game versus Fordham. Linebacker Omar Howard of Richmond, 6 feet, 240 pounds, has a big-time test this week versus Villanova in that ground game. Can he consistently get off blocks? Can he consistently be a factor and be stout versus the run? Because a lot of times when teams play Richmond, the Spiders build up an early lead, and so now we'll get to see how well he does in the pass defense department, but I haven't really seen him yet versus the run. This is a good test, which is why he's on this list as a guy that you should watch this weekend. Devin Bryant out of San Diego has a lot of Brent Grimes to his game. He's a guy that does a good job at high pointing the football. He has great technique and has the instincts, I think, to play in the slot or on the outside. Now, they face Drake this game. They're going to have to find creative ways to match up versus their tight end, Eric Sobert. So can we see Bryant match up on the tight end? I would like to see that from a scouting perspective, but overall, I just want to see how he competes versus that spread offense of the Bulldogs. And finally, I always think that punting is a defensive weapon, and Cal Davis has themselves an outstanding one in Kobe Wadman at 6'1", 213, going up against a Northern Colorado Bears football team that excels in the special teams department. They have actually two of the best returners in the country, so how well can he get hang time on these kicks, and how well can he down that Bears offense inside the 20 is what I'll be watching for in this matchup.
Welcome to the FCS Kickoff presented by Football Gameplan. I'm Chris Victel. First, let's kick off with the results from last week's games on the gridiron. Patriot League offenses are leading all 14 FCS conferences in passing yards per game and completions per game, so this conference has all the best action. The Lehigh Mountain Hawks beat the Colgate Raiders 45-31 at home. Wide receiver Gatlin Casey had the game of his life with 3 touchdown catches and a kickoff return touchdown to help lead his team to victory. He had help from star quarterback Nick Shapniski, who returned to the lineup with a career-high 5 touchdowns, and wide receiver Troy Pelletier, who had his 3rd straight 100-yard game. Lehigh goes to 4-2, while Colgate drops to 1-4. The Fordham Rams beat the Lafayette Leopards 58-34 at home, All-American running back Chase Edmonds had a career high and broke his own school record with 359 yards rushing on the day to go along with his 4 touchdowns. Quarterback Kevin Anderson wasn't too shabby either, and he tossed for 3 touchdowns on the day. The Rams had 41 points at the half and never looked threatened after that point. Lafayette quarterback Blake Searfoss had 325 yards and a touchdown in the loss. Fordham goes to 3-2 on the season, while Lafayette falls to 1-5. The Georgetown Hoyas lost to the Princeton Tigers 31-17 at home. Georgetown started off the game flying with a blocked field goal returned for a touchdown, but Princeton responded with a long drive to regain control. Alex Vallis led the Hoyas with 97 yards rushing and a touchdown on the day. The Hoyas fall to 3-2 this season. The Bucknell Bison beat the Holy Cross Crusaders on the road 21-20. The Bison outgained the Crusaders 363-162, but they needed a 9-yard touchdown run by Chad Freshnock late in the 4th quarter to hold on for a 1-point victory. Bucknell had lost 3 in a row, and they really needed this one to get back on track. Joey DeFloria ran for 149 yards with a touchdown, and quarterback Matt Moo had over 200 yards as well. The Crusaders were led by Jake Wiezarek, who had 61 yards and a touchdown. Bucknell goes to 2-3, and Holy Cross drops to 2-4 this year. 6 of the 7 teams started their conference schedule, so let's bring you the first conference standings of the season. Fordham, Lehigh, and Bucknell all started with a win to go to 1-0. Holy Cross is at 500 at 1-1 on the year. Colgate lost this week to go to 0-1, and Lafayette is 0-2 so far, but there is still a lot of time to make up ground. All 5 games this weekend will be played in the early afternoon. Remember, you can always check out all of the Patriot League football action on Patriot League TV. Starting off, the Lafayette Leopards will travel to West Point to look to turn around their season against Army at Michie Stadium at 12 p.m. You can catch this game nationally televised on the CBS Sports Network. This is Lafayette's first against an FBS opponent since it played Army in 1997. Army holds a 17-1 all-time series lead. The teams are also scheduled to play again in 2018. Leopards quarterback Drew Reed missed all but 1 series in the last 2 games, and his status for this matchup is still questionable with a head injury. Army safeties coach John Luce spent 14 seasons as defensive coordinator at Lafayette under Frank Tavani, winning 4 Patriot League titles. The Leopards also have the top passing defense in the PL, allowing only 180 yards per game. My player to watch this week is wide receiver Matt Mrazek, who just moved into Lafayette's top 10 all-time list of career receptions. He was the team's wide receiver MVP in 2015, and he led the team in receiving yards despite missing the last 3.5 games with a fractured clavicle. Now that he is healthy, he is having a season for the ages. The Bucknell Bison play host to the Colgate Raiders at Christy Mathewson Memorial Stadium at 1 p.m. It is the first of 2 consecutive home games for the Bison. Colgate won a 14-10 thriller over Bucknell last year in Hamilton to complete a perfect 6-0 Patriot League season. Both Colgate and Bucknell suffered losses earlier this season to Cornell, their only common opponent to date. Bucknell running back Joey DeFloria was named Bison Athlete of the Week for his stellar performance in last week's comeback victory versus conference foe Holy Cross. The Bison got off to a slow start last week, losing 17-0, but they came back to win and show their tenacity. Colgate leads the all-time series versus Bucknell 47-17, having won 8 of the last 9 meetings. Colgate comes into this game leading the Patriot League in rushing defense, holding teams to under 100 yards per game. My player to watch this game is Colgate defensive end Pat Afriyi, who leads the Patriot League in tackles per loss per game and is second in sacks. He will need to be on point if the Raiders are going to stop the fierce rushing attack headed by Bucknell's Joey DeFloria. The Fordham Rams host the Yale Bulldogs at Jack Coffey Field at 1 p.m. Saturday will be Salute to Heroes Day at the stadium, where they will honor the service and sacrifice of our first responders and military personnel. This is the Rams' second Ivy League opponent of the season, with Fordham beating Penn 31-17 in the prior matchup. The game will be Fordham's last non-conference game of the season, and they will look to add one more win before the stakes are raised in conference play. Fordham is 3-0 at home and 0-2 on the road, so they hope to keep their home streak going after this one. Running back Chase Edmonds is once again my player to watch this week. The Ram star was named National Offensive Player of the Week for his record-breaking performance in last week's game versus Lafayette. The most eye-popping stat of Edmonds' game was that he reached 359 yards on only 17 carries, averaging 21.1 yards per carry, smashing the former all-time mark. His career points total is 372, which is also a new Patriot League record. He leads all of Division I schools, both FCS and FBS, in rushing yards, rushing average, and all-purpose yards. The Holy Cross Crusaders host the undefeated number 20 Harvard Crimson at Fitton Field at 1:05 p.m. These two teams have already met 69 times in this long-standing rivalry, with Holy Cross last winning in September of 2011. Harvard is looking like one of the top teams in the nation this season, with at least a 10-point margin of victory in all 4 of their games so far. The Crusaders will need major help from their junior linebacker, Nick McBeath, who leads the team with 56 tackles and 5 for a loss so far. Holy Cross head coach Tom Gilmore said, quote, "Harvard will bring a very talented and experienced team to Fitton Field on Saturday. They have been executing well in all 3 phases of the game, and we will have to be at our best in order to earn a victory." End quote. My player to watch this week is actually 2 players to watch, with wide receiver duo Richie DeNicola and Jake Wieserek. They are the heart of this offense, and with quarterback Peter Pujols out, they will need to be firing on all cylinders to take down this nationally ranked Crimson squad. The Lehigh Mountain Hawks hit the road to face the Georgetown Hoyas at Cooper Field in Washington, D.C. at 2 p.m. The two meet for the 22nd time in series history, with the Mountain Hawks holding a 16-5 all-time advantage. Lehigh defeated the Hoyas 33-28 at Goodman Stadium last season. Georgetown has not defeated Lehigh since joining the Patriot League in 2001, and is the only PL team the Hoyas have not defeated in league play. The Mountain Hawks are second in the PL in scoring offense with 40.2 points per game, while Georgetown leads the league in scoring defense with 21.4 points per game. Lehigh has won 4 consecutive games overall, and they look to let that momentum carry over into the conference part of the schedule. The Mountain Hawks' chances look good with an explosive offense that leads the conference in third down conversions and a ferocious defense that leads the conference in third down defense. The Hoyas started the season off 3-0 before losing back-to-back 31-17 games against Harvard and Princeton, so they will need to seize this opportunity to stay above 500 on the season. Georgetown DB Jelani Williamson was named Patriot League Defensive Player of the Week for last week's performance, where he had 6 tackles, an interception, and a blocked field goal for a touchdown. Lehigh wide receiver Troy Pelletier is my player to watch this week. He is leading the FCS in receiving yardage with 770 through 6 games, and the return of quarterback Nick Shafniski will only help add to those numbers. For the FCS Kickoff on Football Game Plan, I'm Chris Fictel.
For the Missouri Valley Football Conference, I'm Brian Sullivan. It was a stellar Week 6 in the Missouri Valley Conference, starting off with North Dakota State, who remained unbeaten as they cruised to a 27-3 victory over Missouri State. The Bison scored twice on 4 Bears turnovers and outgained Missouri State in total yards 428 to 176, including outrushing them 269 to 30, led by King Frazier, who rushed for 126 yards and 2 TDs against the number 7th ranked Bears defense. To South Dakota, where the Coyotes upset Northern Iowa 28 to 25 in the 100th Dakota Days game behind yet another stellar performance by quarterback Chris Strevler, who threw 2 TD passes to wide receiver Takari Carpenter, and the defense held the Panthers scoreless down the stretch to preserve the victory. This was only the Coyotes' second win in the last 9 meetings between the two teams. Off to Western Illinois, where the Leathernecks held on for the victory against Indiana State 36-35 on homecoming day. The Leathernecks, who were up 27-13 before the Sycamores scored 21 straight points, came back behind quarterback Sean McGuire's TD pass early in the 4th, and a Nathan Nuffman 41-yard field goal put Western Illinois up 36-35. The defense stopped the Sycamores on a 4th and 1 at the Western Illinois 29 with 44 seconds left to preserve the victory. To Carbondale, Illinois, where South Dakota State defeated Southern Illinois in a wild shootout 45-39. Jackrabbits quarterback Tyron Christian threw for 5 TD touchdowns. NFL wide receiver Jake Winicky finished with 164 yards and 2 TDs, and Dallas Goddard added 108 yards and a score. Salukis quarterback Josh Stroman threw for 380 yards and 2 TDs in the loss. And finally, to Illinois State, where Youngstown State defeated the Redbirds behind a stellar defensive performance as they had 6 sacks, led by NFL-ready defensive end Derek Rivers, who had 3 of them. They also had 10 tackles for losses and 5 pass breakups while only allowing 250 total yards. Penguin Nation quarterback Ricky Davis and running back Tevin McCaster each had a touchdown in the victory. Redbirds running back James Robinson ran for a career-high 103 yards in the loss. Now let's take a look at the upcoming Week 7 by heading to Indiana State, where the Sycamores look to rebound off their heartbreaking loss as they host number 28 South Dakota. Quarterback Isaac Harker looks to continue his hot season in which he has 12 touchdowns and just under 1,700 yards already to go along with running back Roland Gennesee's 367 yards and 6 touchdowns and NFL-ready wide receiver Robert Tonyan Jr.'s 448 yards and 6 TDs. It will not be easy as South Dakota, fresh off their upset victory against Northern Iowa, counters with their dual threat quarterback Chris Strevler, who has 830 yards and 13 touchdowns and has rushed for 489 yards and another 2 TDs. Now to Illinois State, where the Redbirds, losers of 4 straight, host Southern Illinois as both teams look for their first conference win of the season. After an awful performance last week, the Redbirds offense with quarterback Jake Colby 7 touchdowns, running back George Moriera 287 yards and 3 TDs, and NFL-ready wide receiver Anthony Warren's 504 yards and 2 scores all need to step up in this game if the Redbirds hope to make the playoffs. On the flip side, the Salukis need a strong performance from their quarterback Josh Stroman, who has an amazing 1,608 yards and 11 TDs already this season, and running back DeQuan Eisen needs to have a big game on the ground to open up the passing game if Southern Illinois hopes to win. Now heading over to Youngstown, Ohio, where number 12 Penguin Nation hosts number 19 Northern Iowa. The Panthers, who continue to play the hardest schedule in the FCS, bring their big game offense behind quarterback Aaron Bailey, who keeps climbing the all-time leaderboard for rush yards by a QB, but will have to go against the stout Penguin Nation defense anchored by NFL-ready defensive end Derek Rivers, who continues to add to his already school record-setting sack total and has yet to allow a rushing TD this season. If Northern Iowa hopes to win, they better find a way to get their passing game going with Darius Fontaine, who has 220 yards and 4 TDs this season, in order to open up the running game for Aaron Bailey and running back Tyvis Smith. On the other side of the ball, the Panthers defense must figure out a way to slow down Penguins running back Martin Ruiz, who has 394 yards and 6 TDs already, quarterback Ricky Davis, who has 5 touchdowns, and wide receivers Alvin Bailey and Darian Townsend, whom both have 2 scores apiece. To Missouri State, where the Bears host number 12 Western Illinois. The Leathernecks quarterback Sean McGuire, fresh off the career-high 363-yard game over 3,000-yard receiver Lance Lenore and running back Steve McShane's 587 yards and 6 TDs, go against the monster, number 7th ranked Missouri State defense, led by linebacker Dylan Cole, who will be playing with a chip on their shoulder after losing to North Dakota State last week. This game has upset written all over it, as Western Illinois offense will have a tough time against the Bears defense, who held North Dakota State in check into the second quarter last week. And finally, in the game of the week, number 1 North Dakota State hosts number 11 South Dakota State in the annual Dakota Marker game. After NDSU's offense took care of that great Missouri State defense last week, it's now time for the Bison's defense to step up this week and try to stop the number 4 ranked Jackrabbits offense, which is averaging an unbelievable 45 points per game behind quarterback Tyron Christian's potential record-setting season, in which he has a little over 1,600 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. He leads the MVSC and is second in the FCS in passing efficiency with a 184.1 rating, to go along with our dynamic receiving duo of NFL-ready receiver Anthony Warren and Dallas Goedert, both of whom have 100 yards each in the last 3 games. The Bison defense without their leader, Nick DeLuca, had better step up, or the team will have to rely on the offense led by quarterback Easton Stick, who has 990 yards and 9 touchdowns, running back King Frazier, who has 419 yards and 5 TDs, and wide receiver R.J. Urzanowski with his 280 yards and 2 scores, in order to keep up with the Jackrabbits in an offensive shootout. North Dakota State has won 6 straight in this series, but 5 out of the last 12 games have been decided by 7 points or less. Starting with the Offensive Player of the Week, which goes to South Dakota State's quarterback Tyron Christian for his 5 touchdown passes and his school record-setting 466 yards passing and 475 total yards. Defensive Player of the Week honors goes to Penguin Nation's NFL-ready defensive end Derek Rivers for his 3 sacks, 2 of which came on the final 2 possessions to help seal the game, which gives him a total of 33 for his career. He also had 4 solo tackles in a quarterback hurry. And finally, Special Teams Player of the Week goes to Youngstown State's punter Mark Schuler, who averaged 45.7 yards per punt on 6 kicks, kicked a long of 55 yards, and placed 3 punts inside the 20-yard line. If you still haven't joined the FCS revolution, just go under #FearTheFCS.
We'll start the 4th quarter of our show by previewing some big games from the Midwest and West regions, and let's start our travels in Terre Haute, Indiana, as the Sycamores play host to the Coyotes of South Dakota.
I think this is one of those games where we'll ask the question, how many points can the scoreboard hold, as both teams have high-powered offensive attacks. South Dakota's dual-threat quarterback Chris Strebler is a threat to score from anywhere on the field, whether it's with his accurate arm going deep downfield or it's with his Colin Kaepernick-like acceleration in the open field. He can definitely ring up that cash register pretty quickly. Their defense stepped up big versus Northern Iowa last week, and I really like how everyone gets involved in the run defense department. Indiana State, in my opinion, got jobbed last week versus Western Illinois. The Sycamores are a much better team than their 3-3 record indicates. What they need is for their defense to stop the bleeding inside the red zone offensively. Wide receiver Robert Tonyan Jr. is a matchup nightmare, and I would expect to see him moved all around the formation. I think because of the strain Strebler puts on a defensive football team, because of his running ability, that'll be the deciding factor in which should be a great Missouri Valley Football Conference game. I like South Dakota.
So that's it for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. And if you miss any one of our episodes and want to check it out again, visit our website at footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff. Also, be on the lookout for our podcast, the FCS Opening Drive, which you can find on iTunes, and our conference rip-arounds on our Twitter page, coming from our FCS correspondents providing the analysis.